want you to think back to the time when you finished school. Like at the age of 18 or 19, we are supposed to make a decision of our lifetime. A decision which will determine how our life, or at least the next couple of years, will look like. Am I going to be a doctor or a lawyer, or am I going to work at a clothing boutique? Some people already know what they want to be in life, but honestly, I had no clue. I just wasn't ready for a decision like that. But let's start a little earlier in time. So I come from a good home with loving parents and no financial difficulties. And even in school, I had good grades, I had a good relationship to my teachers, and I had no hard time studying. So all in all, you can say that my youth was rather trouble-free, or some might say my youth was pretty boring. And then during the last 2 years of school, I was extremely motivated. Although I didn't really know what I want to do in life, I understood that studying for school has to be my top priority, because I knew that with a high school graduation, you only have one single shot. And that's why I wanted to give it my everything. And then, long story short, I finished school with the best score in the German system. And I can honestly say that I'm not highly intelligent and I am not highly gifted or something like that. I was just motivated and I knew what I wanted to achieve, and I was good at studying, as some people might know, and I knew what teachers want to hear and want to read in exams. But let me tell you something, finishing school with the best score in the German system doesn't mean you know anything about life itself, the life outside of school. I had no clue what I want to do. I had no clue what to do with my graduation. So I was basically standing there, surrounded by all the expectations of my parents, my family, the teachers, my friends, and everybody else who all saw me as the little blonde girl with the best foundation to become a successful doctor or lawyer or engineer. And I just didn't know what to do. I even considered studying medicine, although I knew that medicine wasn't something I was interested in, and I knew that blood was the last thing I want to see on a daily basis, but I just wanted to do it because everybody expected me to do something stable and reasonable in my life. And then I did some tests because I was desperately looking for something that I could see myself in, and those tests said that my abilities are 80% mathematics, 10% economics, and the other 10%, I don't know, were somewhere else. So I ended up applying for business administration. And before I started studying business administration, I luckily remembered the quote by Mark Twain, which said, "Find a job you enjoy doing and you will never ever work a day in your life." So I decided to take a step back and look at my life and ask myself, should I really start studying just because my parents want me to do it? Just because it's the normal way to live your life after school? Just because it's normal in our society? And I realized that my eyes don't begin to sparkle if I think about mathematics, although I'm good at it. And it doesn't fill me with happiness, so I asked myself, why should I spend the majority of my time in my life with something that doesn't make me happy? So I wanted to be as authentic as possible with my life and my own decisions. And I asked myself, what makes me happy and what do I like investing my time in? And you know, there was this little and until then unimportant hobby of mine called Instagram, which I started at the age of, actually I was 16. And I just liked taking pictures. And I started it at the age of 16. And at the age of 18, when I finished school, I already had about 400 or 500,000 followers, but nobody really considered this as important because nobody knew what Instagram is. Nobody had a vision what 500,000 people are, and nobody had a clue that Instagram might become a big thing one day. But for me, I liked taking pictures. I liked taking pictures of my life, my fashion ideas, my beauty secrets, my fitness journey and everything, and just taking them really unprofessionally, editing them with some Instagram filters, and afterwards sharing them with the world and everybody else. So I did that, and since day one, I had a really strong connection to my followers. I loved answering their questions and just chatting with them as if they were my real friends. So Instagram was always a really important hobby of mine, but I always did it on the side because it wasn't that important to everybody else, but I loved it. And you can remember that Mark Twain basically told us that if we find something we love, we will never have the feeling of working in our life. So I decided to give Instagram a shot. I believed in myself, I believed in my abilities, and I believed in my self-discipline that I always had. I knew that if I did something with passion and with the dedication, I would be able to build something great from there. So I was basically confident enough to go my own way, and I also, I don't know why, but I kind of noticed that it was the right time to take the chance, because sometimes in life you are at the right place to the right time and you have a chance, and if you don't take the chance at this particular moment, the chance will be gone forever. So I decided to do Instagram, and I had no strategy and no structure or anything, I just had the dream. Of course, people told me, Pamela, what a narcissistic and superficial hobby you have. Aren't you ashamed to show your parents or your grandma what you are putting up on the internet? The internet never forgets anything. Or what a waste of your intelligence to do Instagram, or how can you even earn money with iPhone pictures? So regarding the last point, earning money, I didn't even had an answer to this myself. I have never focused on the financial part of it because I didn't have to, thanks to my parents. So I have never heard of influencer marketing before. I had no clue that Instagram could possibly offer you business opportunities one day. But what I did notice that after about 2 years of me just posting pictures and building my audience, companies started contacting me in order to do promotions and collaborations for them because they saw the value that I built over the years and the value of the connection that I have with my followers.
And that is the point where our paths crossed. But let me explain to you how I got to that point in influencer marketing. Me, myself, too. I went to high school, obviously. I was actually quite fortunate that I could graduate quite early. I skipped 2 grades in school and graduated when I was 17. That's quite early for German standards, but everybody else would graduate around 19. And to my parents, to peers, to other people in school, that meant I had now saved 2 years or gotten an advantage of 2 years, which I should use and capitalize on in the best way possible. And similar to Pamela, everybody else, of course, suggested go to university, study a serious subject, whether it's medicine or law or business, whatever you like, but go to university, use this time, get started ahead, and move forward. I myself, back then, I was 17, so still young. I had even done internships in a bank, in a hospital, so I had general ideas, and I felt like business was the way to go, but I didn't have a clear concept in mind of where I saw myself. But I felt the reassurance of everybody else was good enough, and from myself, my perspective back then, I also thought, okay, now I have saved 2 years, I'm sort of ahead of everybody who was back then in my class, so I should go to business school. So I did apply actually to the rivalry school of where we are today. I got accepted, and I went there. So now I was there. I was 17. I was at university. I knew business was sort of the field I was in, so I was in a good area. But I didn't know where I would go. I didn't have any concrete, specific goal in mind that I would work towards. And that meant that in everyday life, I didn't have any specific use to make of my time. I knew university was sort of important, but I also felt there were other nice things, and I wasn't giving up anything by going after the nice and easy things by giving up university, because there wasn't any goal I would pursue. That meant that I would party more than I should have, study less than I should have, and attend less classes than I should have. And that meant that every time the exam phase came around every semester, I wasn't prepared for exams at all. So the only way out was to get a sick note or somehow get out of the exams. And that's what I did a lot of times. And so I did that for 1.5 years. I even went to a semester abroad to Paris, which made it much worse because there it was even amazing to party. So I would do that even more so than before. But once I realized that after 2 years, when I was going back to start my last year of university, the rules were changed. I had to now graduate, complete all my studies, all my exams that I should have had taken before entering the last year. But you guys know the bachelor has 180 credits usually, and after 2 years out of the 3, you should have 120 of those. Myself, that wasn't the case. I had 45. Which caught up with me in a way. Maybe I would have had the power to take all of those exams that summer, study really hard, do it and get it done. But I still didn't have that goal in mind. So there wasn't anything to work towards or study towards. And that meant those exam times came around too, and I still failed. And at the university, being a strict university, that didn't mean somebody asked me to go or look for another university or look for a different space. But I was forced out of university. I was kicked out. So after 2 years of my 3 years in the bachelor, everybody else had expected, dude, you're really ahead. You're on a good path. I had to break it to everyone, say, guys, I'm kicked out. I had to break it to my parents, to my friends. You guys know what the expectations are. All my peers, all my fellow students also thought that was a big failure. And in a way that was. Back then it was a really horrible time for myself. Now it is easier to look back, but back then it was really difficult. So I said, this is probably the point to listen to myself, to be more authentic in who I am, who I want to be. And I knew I wasn't in the place I should be. So I decided to take a step back as well. Pamela did it already when she was after high school. I should have done that too, maybe. But now I did it later. And I decided I would spend distance and be apart. So I applied to internships at startups, which were in the field that I liked, went to Spain and South Africa for a year, and really confronted myself and decided I want to change things. I want to set a goal. I learned a lot of interesting stuff at these startups, stopped smoking, stopped going out, became more diligent, and decided to hit the ground running. I hadn't been diligent before, so now I knew I'd started something. I'd started my studies, and I wanted to come back and show everybody I can do it, and show myself, most importantly, I can finish it well, and then move forward. So that's what I did. I found a university in Spain. I went there. I studied very hard and graduated with distinction a year later, and then followed that path. I knew startups and entrepreneurship were my passion. So I applied to a lot of investment banks and M&A firms. So I had changed. I knew where I was. I knew what I could bring and generate and help for business. But everybody else was obviously seeing my CV, and that looked really strange. And I sent a lot of applications. I sent over 100 applications. I wasn't even once invited to an interview. Which for myself was difficult, but I now had the energy to do it. So at some point, I think overall, just over 200 applications. I was invited to one interview. At the end, I was very honest. It was a firm where I was very honest to, just saying this was a weakness of mine, this was a failure, but now I'm dedicated and I can bring value, so let me in. And I went there and they accepted me, and I spent the summer there seeing a lot of super interesting companies, very smart people, incredible opportunities, but I always felt during that time that I was sort of on the sidelines. It was incredible business being done, but we were advising, and somehow not active, and I knew I wanted to be active. At the same time, my girlfriend had graduated, who studied more diligently, at the same age with her master, and was writing her master thesis, and she could choose a topic, and she chose a business plan. So she chose to write about a business plan to start a fashion label. And I knew I wanted to found my own business. I didn't have that great idea to revolutionize an industry, but I knew I wanted to get it done, and this seemed very reasonable to me to get it done. We had a plan, we can do it. So I called her up every day then, actually, and said, I think this is the way we should go. You are complementing with great skills in marketing, very design-oriented and so on. I myself like this business and sales perspective, so let's do it. And we did it. We didn't have any money, so we had to move back home. We moved back in with our parents. We started our fashion label. She designed clothing, I sold it. We had good results in wholesale, it was women's dresses, so we sold it to hotel boutiques around the world, to Hilton, Viceroy, Ritz-Carlton. But we never managed to build our brand at the beginning because we couldn't buy any ad space. And that meant we had to look for different methods. I started calling up a lot of editors at a lot of big fashion magazines because for us, that felt like the way to go. This is where people interested in fashion go, and that must have an impact if we get placed there. So we were very persistent, and we were eventually placed in magazines. So one morning, I went to a kiosk, bought 10 editions of that magazines because I knew back then my perspective was, now today is going to be a crazy day. We'll get crazy results on our website, online store, and so on. But after all, nothing happened. We didn't see any results. We were placed in one of the biggest magazines next to the most respected brands in the industry and didn't see any traffic. And we didn't understand why that was. In any case, we knew we didn't have capital to buy ad space. This wasn't working, so we had to resort to alternative methods. And what we did was speak to a lot of bloggers. We started to work with fashion bloggers, send them our clothing, ask them to write about it and post about it. And some of them didn't have any impact at all as well. But others had tremendous impact. We didn't expect it, and out of the blue, we got incredible traffic in our online store. We saw a lot of people talking about our brand, giving us feedback, and so on. And we started to get the hang of this concept, influencer marketing. We didn't know it back then, but this was it. And one Sunday night, we were having a glass of wine. We said, this is a huge opportunity. There must be so many other companies in our same position. Why can we not help them or use this positive energy to build something? And that night, Sunday night, we decided to found Pulse Advertising 2.5 years ago now. Went home that Sunday night, registered the business, bought a domain, still didn't have too much money, so looked at YouTube videos to build our own website, started calling up people. And today, 2.5 years later, we're working between Europe and the US and at the forefront of this influencer marketing world, of this game of advertising. And what's important to underline is why is influencer marketing so important, and why is this authenticity so important? When you talk about traditional advertising, there are two basic assumptions that are very difficult and are, from our perspective, bringing a long-term problem. One is when you think about your day, you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night. You listen to the radio, you go online, you see a lot of ads. You see a lot of ad space intervening in the content that you want to see. In the radio, the music you listen to, the movies you watch. At the most interesting part of the movie, it stops and an ad rolls in. So what do consumers do? They shy away from that. You sort of blur it out. You go to Netflix, go to Spotify, you install an ad blocker. So your attention doesn't lie on the direct communication from a brand that approaches you. At the same time, there's 10 different brands, for example, with one same product, all saying their product is the best. So you cannot trust all 10, but who do you trust? People resort back and back to mouth and peer-to-peer recommendation. You ask your friends, you ask other people you know. And an example is the way you book your vacation. Do you go to the hotel website, look at the panoramic view of the room? Probably not, because in the end it's always going to be smaller than you expect or different. So you go to booking.com. You ask a friend, you get some sort of way to understand what the product is and to go into that. There's lack of credibility in traditional advertising, which makes you refocus your attention also here. And this is where influencer marketing comes in. Social media influencers have connection with their followers 24/7. They explain personal problems, they give insight into general feelings, opinions, and so on. That's how they build their following with a great relationship. Actually, yesterday, we were walking down the street and there were 2 teenage girls passing by, and I noticed them looking at Pamela, recognizing her, or not sure to recognize her. We walked past, and then at some point they started running after her and said, "Pamela, is it you?" And said, "You're beautiful, you're so beautiful, we love you," and hugged her right away. And that's just a different concept. These girls have built a relationship with Pamela, and Pamela with them in a way that has a much deeper connection than any traditional celebrity has or anything else has. So this carries a huge opportunity with incredible size of following, of course, at the same size or even bigger sometimes than the traditional media we know. So it's a huge opportunity in this game of influencer marketing, as at the same time a huge responsibility, which is very important to focus on and to look into when speaking about influencer marketing. So authenticity, I hope this is one takeaway from my story and my part. Look into yourself and trust the power of authenticity in decision making, and look into the power of authenticity in way of business and where this leads.
And by now, I have, as most of you probably know, built a community of over 2.8 million wonderful people all over the world who I can share my passions with, and luckily they believe in what I say. They value my words, and they value the content that I share with them on a daily basis. But if you zoom out again, why am I standing here? Just because I once was brave enough to follow my heart. I was brave enough to go my own way, and after 2 very short years, I am now standing here living my dream. And I would have never ever expected everything to turn out this well. I would have never imagined launching my first book at the age of 20, or having my own fitness programs, or seeing myself in magazines like the Vogue magazine or the Incel magazine, magazines that I once used to buy to get my own inspiration from. And I'm actually pretty overwhelmed by myself, by what happened in 2 short years. So I'm standing here and I want I want to empower you to go your own way and listen to your dreams and to your abilities, and to not listen to all the things that your surroundings want to tell you, that society considers as normal, because the power of authenticity is much bigger than you might expect. And if you believe in yourself and if you believe in the power of authenticity, you will in the end succeed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you all.